The footage coming out of Gaza has been nothing short of staggering. Israeli Defense Forces have retaliated against the horrific Hamas-led attack against Israeli citizens with overwhelming and bewildering force, leaving nothing but complete devastation in its wake. But are these scenes a glimpse of what's yet to come for an even wider conflict? Are we seeing the beginnings of nothing less than a very real outbreak of World War III? That's the very question we're going to answer in this video. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you to think better so you can feel better in these absolutely crazy and turbulent times. So make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Let's assess what's going on here, big picture, between Hamas and Israel. First and foremost, it's long been recognized that what we're seeing here between Hamas militants and Israelis is basically the latest chapter in a decades-long blood feud. Now, to be clear, that's not to morally equivocate one side with the other. It's simply a recognition that this is a region marked by a cycle of retaliatory violence, with one ethnic people group seeking vengeance on another ethnic people group. That's all I mean by it. Now, one of the dynamics that's exacerbating this blood feud is what scholars call re-territorialization. And this is a process where as liberal globalism wanes and falls apart across the world, more and more populations are reclaiming their cultural space. And they're beginning to take action to protect that space from any remaining vestiges of the radically anti-cultural dynamics of transnational globalization. It's the very same dynamic that we've been seeing in Africa of late, with all the coups that have been happening in the Sahel region, the latest, of course, being in Gabon. What all of these nations have in common, Gabon, Niger, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Mali, what they all have in common is that they were once French colonies, and now they want to expunge any and all remaining French influence, particularly its political and economic influence from within their borders. Some are calling this a process known as decolonization, but it's actually much bigger than that because it works the other way. And that's what's so key to understanding what's happening between Hamas and Israel. So, for example, in Europe, more and more populations are reclaiming their cultural space, their land, their regions, their borders, their national sovereignty, and in turn, they want to expel what they consider to be foreign influences that are threatening that cultural space. So this explains the massive backlash against immigration that we're seeing, not just in Europe, but in the United States as well. So it's bigger than decolonization. It's more re-territorialization. More and more populations are reclaiming their regions, their cultural space. So this is why you're having a face-off between the Palestinians and the Israelis. They're both claiming their cultural space as they see it. Again, this is not to morally equivocate between the two. It's just to show that the same social dynamic is animating both sides. Now, to compound the problem here, Hamas militants decided for whatever reason to emulate ISIS tactics in their offensive, perhaps because they were so effective in ISIS taking over so much of Iraq and Syria. But the comparison between Hamas and ISIS being made throughout the West, and the problem for the Palestinians, of course, is that such tactics horrified and disgusted the Western world, such that even those who would normally be sympathetic towards the Palestinian cause have basically dropped their support as a result. That horror, that loss of support, has basically given the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, the green light to go into Gaza and turn it into a parking lot. Some have argued that Hamas is actually luring the IDF into a trap and that Gaza is a densely populated urban area and that would bog down the IDF into an unwinnable guerrilla warfare from Hamas hidden in the buildings. But as you can see, Israeli forces aren't leaving too many buildings intact. But here's precisely where things get sticky. While the West has largely given Israel the green light to go in and level Gaza and try to eliminate Hamas, the rest of the world, Russia, China, India, Turkey, the whole of the Middle East, the rest of the world, for right or for wrong, sees things very differently. And this is where we have to understand the difference between the one-state solution and the two-state solution. The one-state solution, in effect, says that Israel retains all the land that it annexed post-1967 after the so-called Six-Day War, and the Palestinians will be consigned to basically being a province within Israel, something like Quebec in relation to Canada, Catalonia in relation to Spain. That's the one-state solution. Israel is the national sovereign, and the Palestinians are a people group forever within a sovereign Israeli nation. The two-state solution would give the Palestinians their own sovereign nation by returning to them the land Israel annexed in 1967, Gaza, West Bank, East Jerusalem, and they would both share their capital in Jerusalem as well. What's happening here is that Israel and much of the West, not the whole of the West, but more the political realists in the West, they're all for the one-state solution. So if Israel needs to go in and level Gaza, so be it. However, the rest of the world supports a two-state solution. And so they see the leveling of Gaza as an inherently hostile act violating at least the potential of national sovereignty. And this is precisely where things can get dicey. So first, in Israel's south, the government of Egypt is sending humanitarian aid to the Palestinians, and they are potentially getting caught in the crossfire of Israel's massive retaliation, which will put pressure on the Egyptian government to retaliate in kind. Then to Israel's north, you've got Hezbollah in Lebanon. Already Hezbollah has fired rockets into Israel, and the IDF forces have retaliated in kind by hitting Lebanon. At the same time, you got neocon warmongers like Lindsey Graham calling for the bombing of Iran, which is a very close ally with Hezbollah, while at the same time, U.S. warships are in the region warning Hezbollah not to enter into the conflict. Now, if U.S. warships hit Hezbollah, that itself could trigger Iran to offer some kind of retaliatory response, which, of course, could result in U.S. forces hitting Iran. Now, what's so important to understand here is that Iran is not the isolated nation it was 10 years ago. Iran now belongs to both the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and BRICS Plus, along with Saudi Arabia and the UAE. In other words, Iran has friends, lots of them, and with formidable economic and military strength, China and Russia being the two biggest. And so any strike against Iran could cause this whole thing to blow up beyond anything we could have ever imagined. This is what makes freaks like Lindsey Graham so utterly repulsive. So obviously what needs to be done here, the number one priority in all of this, is for backroom diplomacy to guarantee that this conflict stays thoroughly regionalized. Let this unfortunate fallout from mutual reterritorialized sentiments play themselves out without any outside direct intervention. And what that's going to mean, again, whether anyone likes it or not, what that's going to mean is that Israeli forces will most likely fall very short of completely wiping out Hamas and leveling Gaza. Again, they have already done a pretty good job at the latter. There doesn't appear to be that much left, but at a certain level of Palestinian integrity and presence is going to have to be maintained in accordance with the expectations for a two-state solution, lest the rest of the world, the non-Western world and Islamic world, feel the pressure to step in and militarily intervene. If that happens, all bets are off. Let's all pray this all stays very much contained. Hey gang, I know what it's like to feel alone out there in these turbulent times, but I broke free. If you too have been looking for a community with like-minded patriots who are serious about resisting globalism, building a parallel economy, and having intelligent and deep fellowship on a regular basis, then you've come to the right place. In my Courageous Patriot Insiders community, we're building a close-knit movement of, by, and for patriots who are breaking free from the outrage and despair cycles of the mainstream media and taking on the fight against globalism. Every week, I deep dive into the content I can't share on big tech and give you the cliff notes on the truth of how patriots just like you are building up their communities, starting patriot businesses, and fighting the woke in both public and private. all with a few history and political lessons from yours truly, of course. If you want to stop feeling alone as a patriot and stand together with this fast-growing community, be sure to click on the link in the description below. Don't wait. Join me and my Patriot Coalition today, and let's get fighting.